let's talk a little bit about the news today. Uh, the issue for me today with this basic what's the word you want to use? Republican hunt um, is to me a pretty interesting one, and something I discussed a little bit on Hot Mic today. The issue is this, I think. On one hand, we have a cultural atmosphere that's bad and getting worse, um, and it is coming from not just from the pop culture. It's also coming from the political class, from the Democratic Party, and the demonization of conservatives and Republicans is something that is very serious, because the collectivist left always needs demons, and if they can't have demons, they can't have their socialist paradise, because socialism doesn't work, you see. And if they don't have demons in the form of either Jews or kulaks or, educated people, whatever, if you can't have the demons, then there's no way to explain the failures of socialism. In the Soviet Union, they would blame all of the failures on wreckers, intentional saboteurs. And the more of the technically qualified people that they killed for ideological reasons, the more of those people that were shot, the more the accidents and catastrophes increased, needless to say. I have a recollection from one of these books that on one single rail line of the entire Soviet system, I'm not talking about the whole country, I'm talking about basically one line. In 1 year, there were 66,000 railway accidents. So you kill all the people who know what they're doing. Maybe they had a little more money or a little higher social status because they knew what they were doing. Kill all those people, and then the accidents go up, and so now we have to find an excuse for, well, the failures are even worse. So then you basically have to kill some more people, because obviously the system's not a problem. This is the thing I mentioned a little bit with the climate firewall and other things I've said regarding maps and territory, but it's the nature of certain kinds of people, like the guy who did the shooting today, for example, or yesterday, whatever it was. Those are the kind of people who have such a deeply embedded political idea that if the computer model says one thing and the atmosphere says something else, then the atmosphere is wrong. If my map says that there should be a mountain range there, but instead there's a river delta, then obviously the coastline is incorrect, because it couldn't be my map. And I'm not joking about this. This is exactly precisely how they think. And this is why they think what they do. And this is also why they have to kill so many people. Because reality keeps intruding on this bizarre fantasy world of theirs. So back to the shooter, who I'm not going to mention by name. I have a policy of not mentioning those people by name. I did it one time on the Hot Mic show today, simply just as a means of identifying the guy for people who wanted to look up some of the things we were saying on Facebook. Other than that, he's never going to hear I'm never going to mention his name again, except for murderer. So here's the thing. First of all, the first issue is what happens with this toxic culture and demonization. I don't believe in hate speech, and I don't believe in I don't believe there's such a thing. I believe there's such a thing as hateful speech. There's no question about that. But I don't believe that there is a certain category of things that you can say that deserve special punishment. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's anything you should say that deserves special punishment, with the obvious example of screaming fire in a crowded theater, that kind of thing. There is an exception made for sedition, however, and calling for the violent overthrow of the government is not protected in my understanding, and I think that's probably appropriate. So actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about this pretty much all night, because I think this is the issue, and then I'm going to call it a day. So we'll just talk about this because it's a very important issue. See if I can boil this down to a firewall eventually. So on one hand, we have our free speech rights. And on the other hand, we have this increasingly toxic, increasingly hostile culture. Now, looking at things historically, I can tell you that if the demonization of the Jews or the kulaks or the whoever, the intellectuals in Cambodia, whatever, if it is not stopped by one means or another, then that will give the left, which is always the left, and people say, well, the Nazis were the far right. They were collectivist, big state socialists. The Nazis were racial socialists and the communists were class socialists, but they both had to kill people. They both had to have an enemy because the system doesn't work. So if we don't do something to stop this demonization and worse than that, dehumanization of Republicans and conservatives and Trump supporters and Trump himself, if we don't do something to stop it, then bad things are going to happen. As a quick parenthetical observation, however, one thing that does make it easier for me to sleep at night is if they tried something like this, the way they've tried it in so many other places where they killed 200 million people. This would be the first time that the people doing the oppressing would be people who faint dead away at the sight of an apple peeler on a kitchen countertop, and the people who are the presumptive victims of this dehumanization and demonization are highly armed, highly trained professionals who are ready to defend themselves and have been preparing that for most of their life. That's why I'm actually proud to be working on the NRA. When I say actually proud, I don't mean it to be qualified. I'm very proud. And when I was asked to do the show, I know this is meandering, but it's all going to come together, believe me. I thought, what do I know about guns? I don't know. I know which end the bullet comes out of 9 times out of 10. I can tell the difference between the muzzle of the gun and the place where you put the magazine. I have that much skill, perhaps, but I'm not a gun expert by any means. So why would I do a show for the NRA? I'm talking about the Grant show that I've been doing since 6 months now. What is it that I've got to bring to the table here? And I've come to realize, and I'm very proud to realize, that the NRA has become, as it's become the defender of the Second Amendment rights, it also seems to me to be the most powerful voice in defense of all of the freedoms. It's very, very, very Second Amendment centered, and that's appropriate for the National Rifle Association. However, it strikes me that if you don't understand the Second Amendment, you'll never understand the First, and you'll never understand the rest of them. If you don't understand the Second Amendment, then you don't understand anything about this country at all, because the Second Amendment is not about my ability to keep a musket or an AR-15 in my closet. That's not what the Second Amendment is about. And people even get closer, much closer to what the Second Amendment is about, was when you say, well, it's our weapons that we use to protect ourselves against the government, and it's the deterrent to government takeover and violence and all the rest. And did I say clip? I'm sorry. If I said clip, I meant to say magazine. So that's also a good reason for the Second Amendment, but that's not the justification of the Second Amendment. In my mind, the justification, come to this after 10 years of thought, my mind, the Second Amendment is critical because if you give ultimate power to the individual citizen, then you truly have given power to the people, not just rhetorically, not just like, hey, it's a nice slogan for me to go and tyrannize people on. People talk about people power, more government. No, if it turns out that the people have the ability to have final deadly force, if that power resides in the people, it's not even a question of being able to face criminals. It's not a question of defending your home. It's not a question even of defending yourself against the government. What it really says is it says that it is the citizens of a country that are, in fact, the rulers of that country. The Second Amendment treats Americans as adults, and it treats them as citizens, and it treats them as the boss of the government and not the other way around. That's why you need a Second Amendment. The Second Amendment simply says the people are more powerful than the government, which is why the collectivists hate it so much. And that's why so many progressives hate it instinctively. They don't know why they hate it. They just hate it. They tell themselves they hate it because it's the NRA that is supplying guns to these murder pits. Well, on the contrary, the people in the NRA are extremely disciplined people as a rule, and I bet you of all the murders that are committed, I don't know what percentage of them are committed by illegal guns, by people who should not legally be holding a gun anyway with existing laws. But I'll bet it's a very, very high number, very high. So I decided I wanted to be part of the NRA because it appears to be the most effective champion of the American idea of independence, self-reliance, and government of the people, by the people, and for the people in all areas. So what I'm trying to do with that hot mic show is I am trying to show how the pop culture and the news media are destroying the belief in the idea that the people are in charge, the belief that that adults should be left alone. And this is why the left hates it so much. I think the left hates guns for two reasons. One of them is because probably on a barely subconscious level, they don't like the fact that in America, people can resist the government. They're all about government. They're all about politics. It's what they do. They don't have to be political. Many of them are, but they could just be garden variety, progressives, have no interest in running for office. But the idea that an individual would be more powerful than the government is something they simply cannot understand, tolerate, or accept. That's because they're collectivists. I'm an individualist. I think any individual American is more important than the entire American government. Can I say that again? I think the life of any individual American is more important than the American government. It's simple to me. And that's what the Second Amendment does, is it puts the power, the Second Amendment is where the Constitution puts its money where its mouth is. It's actually not a bad statement if somebody want to write it down so I don't forget it. The Second Amendment is where the Constitution puts its money where its mouth is. I'm going to have to write that down because I never remember anything. I don't generally write on the back of a helmet brochure, but that seems like a good one to write on. Sorry. Okay, so there's that aspect of it. They don't like the fact that individuals are able to, resist the government, because progressives are not fond of that idea. If we're able to resist the government, then that means at some point maybe we would stop being a food source for these parasites. Then what would they do? If they didn't have working people to take money from, then they'd have to get a job, a real job, and that simply is not going to happen. So there you are. You're left with all of that. Okay, so there's that, and I mentioned this on the show today, and I think this is a very, very, very important point. I think the main reason progressives hate guns so much is because they are unwilling or unable, or both, unwilling or unable to defend themselves intellectually and emotionally. Any idiot can pull the trigger on a gun. That's proven every day. But there's something about the progressives that is so fundamentally adolescent. They want daddy to take care of it for them. They want daddy to take care of things for them. They want mom and dad to pay for their rent. They want mom and dad to keep them supplied with food. They want mom and dad to cover the clothing. And most importantly, they want mom and dad to keep them safe. They want the government to keep them safe. And that's what they want. They want mom and dad to do it. They don't think this through, which is why, of course, they blame the gun. They think that if you could get rid of guns, you could get rid of murder. There's so many ideas, so much wrong with that. But in any event, the thing that strikes me so much about this, and listen, I had this belief for 55 years or 53 something. I mean, I felt this too. We think that the police are here to protect us. We think that because we can reach up and dial 911, we think we are safe from murder, rape, assault, all of it. And it took me 56 years to suddenly realize what's extremely obvious, and that is just not true. The police do not burst in the door with guns blazing at the moment just before you're shot, and they shoot the gun out of the criminal's hands or whatever. It just doesn't happen that way, which is why I'm so fascinated by the pop culture and its effect on our larger culture. So why would people think that the police could rescue you or prevent you from being murdered? Why would people think that? What would give them the idea that the police could prevent you from being harmed? Well, 50, 60, 70, 100 years of movies, radio, and television is what's given you the idea. Because as a writer, I understand I want to take a person, I want to make them sympathetic to the audience. I want the audience to like them. I want to put them in danger. And then when they're in mortal danger, I want to have a hero arrive and save them from mortal danger. So how many times have we seen in the course of our lifetime, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times have we seen the police stop a murder? The hero always arrives to stop a murder. But in the real world, the police do not prevent those kind of crimes. Police patrols can prevent burglaries to some degree and to a larger degree, but murder, rape, and all this, no. The police arrive to put a chalk outline around your body, and the job of the police in that point, after a murder has been committed, the job of the police is to find out who did it. You're gone. You're gone. So this is something that the progressives will not face. They don't want to face it, because if you do face it, then you are suddenly not letting mom and dad handle things for you. Then you realize, you know what, my ability to feed my family is going to be dependent on me working, and dependent on me saving money, and dependent on me having insurance and all the rest. And my ability to defend myself is going to be dependent on me, my willingness, my ability, all of it, to save my life and the life of the people I love. And that is what adults do. Adults understand these things. Adults are willing to face these things. And we used to have a nation of adults. Virtually all of the members of the greatest generation who went overseas and saved the world from fascism and imperialism and all the rest. They were 18, 19-year-olds, almost all of the ones doing the actual fighting. If you were 23, 24 years old in a platoon in Iwo Jima, you were called the old man. You were known as the old man because you're 23. You're Doc. You're old. You're the old man. So those people were adults, and they had to be. They were raised to be. That's why they did such amazing things. And many, many millions of Americans are adults today. Many of them are in the armed services and police forces and so on. But when you talk to policemen, you find that they don't have any misconceptions about this. They understand the world because they see the world. So back to our shooter. He's a Bernie supporter. That doesn't make him a murderer. It does make him an idiot. I've seen photos of him with a protest sign, walking a protest line, basically saying, increase taxes, we need 20 million brackets, I guess. So basically what he's saying is, give us more money from rich people, which always ends up being the middle class, by the way. Give us more money. You people with the money, give us more of it. That's what he was out there enough motivated to make a sign and go stand there and walk up and down the street saying, give us more of your money. It's our money. You're just holding it. So he's got all of that. But the thing that's really alarming about the climate now is that, as I mentioned before, the progressives need a demon. And they're actually getting to the point where they're starting to make them. The argument is pretty simple, really. If you say that this is like the Antifa cowards and all the rest of them, and this guy, by the way, perfect example. If Donald Trump is Hitler, then stabbing Hitler to death in a play and getting a standing ovation in New York City kind of makes sense, right? I mean, if it's Hitler and the people rise up and stab him to death, well, death to tyrants, that's great. So if Trump is Hitler, then progressives are heroes. But they're not heroes. They're cowards. It's physical cowardice. So it's just plain simple as that. It's cowardice. So since they're cowards, what they have to do is they have to take a non-threatening entity like Republicans or Tea Partiers, or Donald Trump for that matter, and they have to make them into Hitler, rhetorically and emotionally, psychologically. Because now they can be opposed to something and feel important and feel brave. That's why these people call themselves anti-fascists. That's why these little spoiled, whiny children call themselves social justice warriors. They call themselves warriors. And I've seen pictures of them on campus lately, I mean within the last week or two. And you'll see, these kids and, they're carrying baseball bats and they've all got and the picture's perfectly posed, by the way. And it looks like they're posing for, you know, they're posing for some war movie. It's like some kind of squad. And they all got that attitude, and they've all got this, we're going to defend the campus against fascists. You're not going to defend the campus against anything. You think you are. In your head, you think you are. But the second things get real, you're going to run and hide. And that's what we found when people started to show up to protect conservatives. That these Antifa cowards just, once somebody starts swinging a punch back, they head for the hills. It's easy to throw a bicycle lock and make a person bloody when they're basically trying to have a conversation with you. But when you run into people like our friend Saba, who's ready to fight back, all of a sudden it gets more complicated for them. So they're cowards. And since they're cowards, they can't fight real evil, because if they wanted to fight real evil, they'd be in the U.S. military killing ISIS. If they really were about fighting evil and the rights of women and gays and all the things they talk about, then they'd be in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard, protecting innocent people against the murderers that are actually out there doing this. But they're cowards, and they're too afraid to do that. So since they're too afraid to do that, they have to take a safe enemy and turn them into a dangerous one. So I have no doubt whatsoever that this mass murderer, certainly attempted mass murderer, genuinely believes that this is a fascist takeover. I have no doubt whatsoever that he genuinely believes that that Donald Trump is an illegitimate president, needs to be removed by any means necessary. And what does that actually accomplish? When you get right down to it, what does it accomplish for him? Because you have to imagine it's going to take a fair amount of motivation to do something like this, right? Obviously, the guy's nuts. Nobody goes in and shoots people up. You're nuts if you have to murder somebody. So he's obviously nuts, but what's driving him? What's driving him is he has been so indoctrinated in his Facebook groups like Terminate the Republicans. He's so indoctrinated by this belief that Trump is genuinely evil, that he's a usurper, that he's a tyrant, and all the rest, that he's decided that he's going to give his life fighting it, because I suspect he's the kind of guy who wasn't too far away from suicide anyway. But now, instead of just being a lost, lonely guy with, domestic abuse problems, now he's, I've forgotten his name. I'm so embarrassed. The German who spoke up against Hitler. I've almost got it. It's on the tip of my tongue. It'll show up in 15 seconds here. Something Hofer. Anyway, now he's a hero, you see. He's a hero. And he believes it. So this is where the danger is. The danger is allowing this rhetoric to continue. The danger is in having the government producing this kind of rhetoric. We're hearing this from Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and the Justice Department and all the rest. We're hearing it all over. I don't have to tell you that at a Tea Party rally, people leave the parks cleaner than they do when they arrive. And at Occupy Wall Street or Black Lives Matter rallies, there are murders, there are assaults, rapes, all kinds of things. We all know this is true. So they project their own hatred, their own rage, their own lack of emotional control onto us. As another parenthetical, I did an interview a couple days ago. I was talking to a Secret Service agent, and he says, I don't like my daughter watching violent movies, and I don't watch them either, because I don't like violence. It kind of makes me sick. Bonhoeffer, thanks. I was going to say Klinghoffer. Thank you. It's Bonhoeffer, German who stood up to Adolf Hitler and, of course, was killed for it. Just before the war ended, they kept him until like 2 days before they were liberated and then shot him. So I was talking with this Secret Service agent, Dan Bogino, and he doesn't like violence. He doesn't like watching violence. He doesn't go to movies where people get shot and blown away in slow motion and think it's cool. And I was so struck by this, that the left, who was terrified of guns, terrified of all these other things, have a vision of people who are so undisciplined that they simply start shooting. Think about it. What movies sell? At least today, what movies sell? Fast and Furious. These are criminals committing criminal acts. Ocean's 13, they're criminals. The bad guys now are it's a crooked cop, it's this or that. But when you talk to actual law enforcement or military, the real ones, what you find is two things have struck me very hard about the actual people that fight actual wars or put themselves in danger's way, in harm's way in order to protect us. First of all, they don't like violence, and they're not violence junkies. They are there to protect people, and nothing would make them happier than to never have to use their weapons Certainly in terms of policemen, I know some special forces guys feel like their job is to go out there and hunt these people down, and good for them. I agree with them 100%. But they're also the kindest people I've met. They are genuinely kind. I visited CENTCOM at the request at the invitation of a friend of ours here, and the most striking thing about CENTCOM is that it's made up of the kind of people who you would see in church or at a barbecue or walking down the aisle at the supermarket. These are decent family people who have decided that they wanted to do genuine good in the world instead of just talk about it. So that's the whole, we got to do something about the speech argument. Now the flip side of the argument is where the cheese gets binding, as a friend of mine used to say. I don't believe in hate speech as a thing. I think hate speech is an excuse you use when somebody's saying something you don't like. That's hate speech. Ban it. So I don't buy the hate speech argument. Is the stuff that's coming out of is Kathy Griffin's beheading of Donald Trump hate speech? In my mind, it absolutely is. Certainly, Terminate Republicans is a hate speech group, but that's not grounds to stop them. So here's the problem. The problem is they have a right to do these things. And here's where it gets to be really meaningful, certainly to me, and I would hope to most other people who really do a lot of this. If it turns out that you believe that somebody else would go out and commit murder based on something that I said, even something that I said repeatedly, two things happen if you buy that argument. First of all, you believe that people are programmable robots and that there's no such thing as free will, free choice, none of it. You have reduced them from being human beings to being essentially puppets or sponges that only act based on your reactions. That's exactly what the left does with Islam, by the way. They will not accept the fact that Islam has its own agenda and its own aggressive agenda. They simply will not believe it. So what they do is they say Islam is just reacting to what we do because we're real people, and they're not. So you reduce the criminal to a non-human, not to a subhuman, to a non-human. He couldn't help himself. He simply did it. It's society's fault. If you're going to go down that road, then you become a collectivist, right? If it turns out that it's society's fault that causes murders, then all you have to do is fix society and the murder goes away. My feeling is that murder and murderous people have been with us forever and will be with us forever. And so therefore we need to protect ourselves against them. But it does something much worse than that, I think. If it turns out that that is true, that there are some people out there that are susceptible to this, then you're in real trouble. And I will just tell you about the conversation I had behind the scenes at PJTV, since I no longer work for them, and I'll just give you the basics. When I made that joke about opening fire on Californians if it looks like they're going to come in and move to Texas, that's hyperbole. If anybody actually believed that I genuinely meant that you should open fire on cars with California plates, then there's something wrong with your perception abilities. You belong in a mental institution. You don't belong out in the world with real people. It's hyperbole. When somebody says that, wow, my suitcase weighs a ton, I'm not going to assume that means that their suitcase weighs 2,000 pounds. I'm going to assume they mean that their suitcase is heavy, very heavy. So this is exactly the kind of rhetorical device I was employing. And it was a joke, and it got a big laugh, and everybody laughed, and everybody knew it was a joke. But the people on the left who either knew it was a joke and decided to come after me anyway, or more likely only heard the thing in quotes and have this fantasy belief that we're all murderers and Nazis, so believed it and gave me all kinds of death threats and stuff, which I cheerfully ignored. But here's the problem. PJTV asked me to apologize for this. And I said, no, I'm not going to apologize for this. And they were quite insistent on it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I said, because of two reasons. First of all, if I apologize for this, it's an admission that somebody could take it seriously. To apologize for this joke is an admission that somebody could take it seriously. And I don't believe that anybody could take it seriously. Certainly no one who was there or saw the original video could take it seriously. And so I'm not going to apologize. Absolutely not. Not going to happen. I'll apologize when I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong here, so I'm not going to apologize. That was the first thing that happened. And then the second thing that happened was I was told, you know, you have to be careful because there are people out there who are kind of on the edge, and we have to be careful that we don't do anything to push these people over the top. And you should think about, Bill, you should think about the fact that when you make a statement like that, you may know it's a joke and other people may know it's a joke, but there may be people out there who don't know it's a joke, who then may act upon this. And my reply to this was, first of all, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that hearing me talk about opening fire on cars with California plates is going to cause anybody to do it. I don't believe that, but let's say for a moment that it is true. Let's say that it is true. Let's say that I make a joke like that and somebody is so deranged that they go out and start doing this. What does that mean if I'm responsible for this? What does it mean if I'm responsible, or you're responsible, or somebody else is responsible? What does it mean? It means that every single person in this country has to restrict their speech to the kind of speech that could not upset in any way the most mentally unstable person in the country. That's what it means, right? We all clear on this? If it turns out that me speaking my mind about something causes somebody to go out and kill somebody else, then the only way to prevent this kind of catastrophe is to make sure that nobody says anything that would cause the craziest person in the country, because that's what this guy is, to go out and do something. And I'm not going to live that way. So that's the argument. So I don't think that the Donald Trump thing, I don't think that things like the Julius Caesar production of Trump getting stabbed in the park caused this guy to do it. I don't think that. And I don't think that they should be stopped or banned. I think you could pull funding from them because I think it's an appalling taste, but that's a different argument. They're using $30 million of our money they tax us, take our money at gunpoint to show us, having our elected a leader assassinated. I think if you're going to weaponize, if you want to weaponize theater in the park, then fine, weaponize it. Find lots and lots and lots of rich liberals to pay for it, because if you think you're going to get our tax dollars so that you can play Shakespeare in the park and murder our president and have us pay for it, you got another thing coming. That's part of, by the way, membership means so much to me, because I don't have to work for other people and their opinion. And I will say, to the credit of the NRA, that once I started there, the Media Matters wrote some story about me being a racist, and I thought, okay, am I going to get the same call that I got before? And as it turns out, I looked, and it turns out Collier Noir had been on top of the guy who wrote the story and so on. And their attitude basically was, well, welcome to the club. It's a sign of achievement. If you've been called a racist by Media Matters, it means you finally arrived on the political scene. And their attitude was, of course they're going to call you that. They call all of us racists. So congratulations. And that is a very nice feeling. So there's the balance, right, guys? Here's the issue with this shooter. The issue is, and there's another issue which I'll get to in a second. The issue is the conversation, the political rhetoric coming from Hollywood and the news media and the Democratic Party and all the rest of these nut jobs is becoming dangerous, not just for Republicans and conservatives. It's dangerous for the country. It's extremely dangerous. The thing I was going to say is that this is the first time in history that warriors, that the collectivist murderers, are the people who are afraid of an apple peeler, while the victims, the supposed victims, are heavily armed. So that's why it's not going to happen that way. And I talked to Kurt Schlichter today on the show. He said the left is not going to want to play by the rules that it's creating. He's right. These people talk about a lawless society and anarchy and resistance and stuff. You don't want to live in a world where there's no law, because we're prepared to defend ourselves. And you're not, for reasons that have to do with two specific letters, and I'm not going to give anybody else, it's because of RK, have a drink on me. So that's the whole issue. And I think the answer is, we cannot blame any of these people for this shooter's behavior. But at the same time, we can say that without restricting individual speech, without making it illegal, by all means pull the funding from these people, and by all means boycott them. That's speech too, I don't think any of these things need to be shut down. I don't think they can be shut down, because then who decides? So I don't buy the hate speech argument. But we had also simultaneously, while allowing these people to have their protests, disgusting though they may be, we have to simultaneously understand that we have to also do something about this ongoing demonization. And when I say do something, I mean fight it. And I think that means fight it rhetorically. Which is why I'm so excited about this whole Star Citizen movie thing, only because I can have villains, and it's a puppet show. It's a halfway house between the work I do now and the work I'd like to be doing with live movies. Live movies cost millions of dollars to make, and I think I can get those live millions of dollars, but it's very hard to get there from here. The whole idea of a computer generated movie set with computer-generated actors and sets and props and explosions and lighting and guns and spaceships and all the rest of it is appealing to me because I can make these kind of arguments. And then there's the final argument I'd like to talk about tonight. We'll call it a night, I think. And that is this. There were reports that some reporters were shocked that after the shooting, that Republican members of Congress would still be saying, no, of course we don't want gun control. The left couldn't understand it. Many people on the left don't understand it. They think that, okay, now that he's gotten it, now that he's been shot, this big gun advocate, he's undoubtedly going to be in favor of gun control, just like Jim Brady was. But he's not. And the reason he's not is because he's not governed by emotions or selfishness. He's governed by principles, as am I, and as are you. So the final point I would like to make about this is, if the people I care most about in the world were gunned down with an AR-15, I'd be devastated, and I may never speak again about it, but I can assure you that it would not change my opinion on AR-15s or gun ownership. It would not change my opinion of them, because my opinion of them is not based on ignorance or lack of knowledge or lack of experience or not having come in contact with it. It's something I've thought about very carefully and deeply for a long time, and I know you have too. So if somebody gets gunned down, I'm not going to change my mind. If I'm killed by firearms and people say, well, see, he deserved it because he's supporting it. No. Firearms have protected the American people from their own government, from criminals, from wild animals, and all the rest of it. And if I'm a victim of somebody using a weapon against me, then it's almost certainly going to be an illegal weapon. And even if I'm shot by the president of the NRA, it doesn't change my opinion on it. It doesn't mean, now I bet he thinks differently. No, I don't think differently. These beliefs stand on their own. These are principles, and they are eternal principles, and they're well thought out principles. They're moral principles. They're decent principles. They've protected people. They've allowed the rise of science and music and poetry and all the rest of the stuff that the left loves. And its requirements are willingness to inflict fatal violence on the people that would try and take that away from us. There are people in the world, both domestically and abroad, who can't make anything. And they see us. This is what the shooter was, right? He's holding up a sign, give us more of your money. So there's a loser who can't get anything for himself, or certainly is not willing to try hard enough. And so his feeling is, well, somebody else has this stuff. I don't, so I have a right to take it from them. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have that right. And other countries look at America and ISIS, for example, Al-Qaeda, all the rest of these losers. Most of these Islamic jihadis all look at America. They go, America doesn't deserve all of this wealth and security and prosperity that it has. By the way, let's not forget that if you read the Quran, heaven, the description of paradise in the Quran is Las Vegas. And we go to Las Vegas any damn time we want to. If you read the Quran, you find out that paradise is what? What is it? It's a place of comfortable chairs with flowing water from fountains where you can drink wine, and you have all of these 72 versions. You have all of the sexual access you want. You can listen to music. You can get drunk. You can do all the things that you can't do here on earth if you go ahead and kill somebody in the name of Allah. And we have this all the time. And they can't stand it. They can't stand it. So they don't think that we deserve it. So they're going to try and come in and take it from us. And this is the essence of it too. And this is how you know what kind of people you're dealing with, not just with Islam, but in general. And here's the problem: the most disgusting thing about this. If you had somebody, or a country, or a group that looks at what we have and decided that they wanted it and tried to take it, it's understandable in terms of human nature. This also is understandable, but this is the fault line in the human heart. But I guarantee you that every single one of these people out there, including our shooter, but taking ISIS as an example, I bet you anything that these people believe that we want what they've got and we're going to take it. But if we can't take it, then we're going to destroy it. And furthermore, if it turns out that we can't take it from them and have it, we can't have this earthly paradise. If it turns out we can't have it, and if it turns out that we have to destroy it, these people would rather have a lower standard of living for themselves so long as nobody had a better standard of living of them. And that's all you need to know about people. Natasha tells me about some of these people way out in the country, some of these peasants who basically live by this. Everything they do is looking at what others have and denying it to them, because if they wanted to have an extra horse or a nice car, that would mean they'd have to work harder, and they're not willing to do that. They're bitter, and they're filled with rage, and so what they do is they tell themselves that the people with nice cars didn't deserve the nice cars, and in fact they've stolen our car basically, so it's only justice for me to go get that car. But they don't want to work for it, and there you go. ISIS as an example, Islam as a greater example, could certainly produce the kind of world where they want to live, where we would want to live, because they're already producing the kind of world where they want to live. If you really want a heartbreak, you go look up Kabul, Afghanistan in 1978-79 before Islam really took over there. Or look at Baghdad in the mid-60s. Or look at Tehran or Beirut. And it looks like Miami Beach. Everybody's happy. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's dressed modern clothing. They're wearing swimsuits at the beach. And they're prosperous, and they're contributing, and they're living a better life. And then all of a sudden, it's like a plague hit. It did. It's like a post-apocalyptic version of America. All of the skyscrapers are burned out skeletons now, where this religion has taken hold. Certainly this aggressive form of the religion. I've seen a picture that's just heartrending. I've seen pictures, needless to say, of young women in the 70s and versus today, in their burqas and all the rest of it. There's one picture from Afghanistan, I think it's from Kabul, where you can see this beautiful tree-lined kind of almost like a garden path, and there are trees on the side, and everything's green, the grass is mowed, and the sidewalk or whatever is well maintained. It's a beautiful, beautiful little garden. And somebody saw that picture and took a picture from that exact same angle today, and it's just sand and smashed concrete. Everything's dead. Everything's gone. It's like a nuclear bomb hit them. This connects to the shooter in the following way, and I think I'm just going to wrap it up here. If your life is so miserable that all you end up doing is looking at what other people have and what you don't have, if you spend all your energy, which you could have spent making your life better, but if instead you spend all of your energy building up a hatred for what other people have that you don't have, rather than working to improve your own situation, then rage and jealousy is your perpetual state of mind, and you become one of these losers that's capable of pulling a trigger. It's the lowest part of the human heart. It's the lowest part of the cortex. Murders and rapes are driven by deep, deep, ancient, pre-human, pre-primate, probably even pre-mammal imperatives. Chimpanzees murder, and so do dolphins. But envy is a high-level function. You have to have an actual brain to be envious. And that's what drives all the poverty in the world. It's what drives all of the religion. So there we go. My friend Steve Darrow says, before I wrap, it's in caps so I could hear it. Carla is going to be in Dallas-Fort Worth at the meetup. I think it's for TPUSA. So if you want to meet Carla with the Bill Whittle booth, that'll be in Saturday. Pretty sure it's in Dallas. Yeah, Dallas-Fort Worth. So by all means, if you want to go meet the famous Carla, go do that, and I would certainly love appreciate your support. I think it's a female conference, but I think anybody can attend. So there you go. What happened today in Virginia was a person went hunting for Republicans. He's not the first person to do this, and people have gone hunting for blacks, and people have gone hunting for gays, and people have gone hunting for all the rest of these things. But he's hunting for Republicans, and his moral justification is that they're evil, and they deserve it, and therefore my miserable life will have some meaning because I'll be a hero against the resistance. I think it was Ed Driscoll who wrote this, and it's just captured it perfectly. He said, hey, kids, your dad isn't Hitler, okay? That's all you really need to know. That's the antidote to all this. Your dad isn't Hitler. What does that mean? It means that Donald Trump isn't Hitler. It means that your desire to make him into Hitler and to make his followers or conservatives into Nazis is driven by your own sense of physical cowardice. You will not go and fight genuine evil, and since you're physically cowards, you will find a safe target, and you will emotionally inflate that target to the level of Nazis. Because fighting conservatives as a progressive doesn't mean risking your life, and they all know it, not yet anyway. They get to call themselves social justice warriors and face no consequences. It's the kind of a life you can have as a coward. You can say, I'm at war with these horrible people, and I've got a hashtag, and therefore I'm doing my best to fight against Hitler. I'm essentially the same as Bonhoeffer. I'm standing up to the Nazi death machine. I have no doubt whatsoever that's what this guy thought when he murdered innocent, or tried to murder men, women, children, all of them. I'm sure that was his justification. But it's not true. And the reason that you're so disgusting to me is because you are using this pathetic weakness of your own. You're using this pathetic flaw in your character to make yourself big in your own eyes and in the eyes of your friends. And if you have to kill people to do it, that's fine. But even if you don't kill people, even if you're just one of these, kids that walk out of a commencement speech by Mike Pence, you are claiming for yourself status that you have not earned. Walking out of a Mike Pence graduation ceremony is not equivalent to refusing to give the Hitler salute, being the only guy in an entire crowd who doesn't give the Hitler salute. It's not the same as being Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer risked his life and gave his life against actual evil. That took real courage. What you're doing doesn't take any courage. And what this shooter did today doesn't take any courage. It doesn't take any courage to go out there and fire 100 rounds at people on a baseball field. And that's not heroism. It's cowardice. And this is more and more, I get clearer and clearer on this. And this is growing as the people are giving in to the progressive understanding. Progressives understand human nature. Look, socialism and progressivism is very simple. There are a few people who want power, and the way they achieve power is by promising large numbers of people that we're going to steal from somebody else and give it to you. I'm going to buy your vote by promising you that I'm going to take money from that guy, I'm going to give it to you, so vote for me. So they do vote for them, and the next thing you know, both parties are happy. The climbers who want political power have political power, and the losers who don't want to work but want the benefits of other people's work get their stuff too, and that's why the system actually functions as well as it does until it reaches its fruition, at which point the people who have taken political power no longer need the idiots, the useful idiots who put them into office. They vote away voting. They start ruling by decree. They start murdering whoever they want to. And the people that end up getting murdered the most are the revolutionaries, the socialist revolutionaries. Socialist revolutionaries, being a socialist revolutionary, a successful one, is probably one of the most dangerous jobs in the world because, as I look at it, virtually all of them are killed by their own party. You don't have enough party-mindedness, so off you go. So those are my thoughts on today. We have to do both. We have to we have to fight back against this this demonization. We have to call it what it is. We have to point out that they're the Nazis, they're the fascists, not us. And we have to do it aggressively, and we have to do it constantly. We have to do it through every means at our disposal. And at the same time, we have to resist the temptation to blame the actions of an individual on what other people say. Because if you buy that model of human behavior, you're not an individualist. If you buy the fact that society forced this guy to go out and kill Donald Trump, and therefore we should shut down this play, then you are basically agreeing to the proposition that people's behavior is based on society and not that society is based on people's behavior. And if people's behavior is based on what society says or doesn't say, then all you have to do is control what society says and doesn't say, and you'll have your perfect world that you've been waiting for 2.5 million years, and we'll be waiting for another 2.5 million years. So that's about it, I think. Anyway, thank you so much for coming in and watching, and it's been a real pleasure to be here today. And I like my helmet very much. I'm going to probably sleep with it on. Sorry, honey, but you know, it's been waiting for this for a long time. And that'll do it for the Stratosphere Lounge, episode number 156. Good Lord, fantastic! Thanks again for all the help and for all the support, and especially for your forbearance with the technical issues that seem to be part of the karma of the show somehow, I think. I can't explain it any better than that. In any event, I think that'll do it for me. So Stratosphere Lounge 156 is coming to an end. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks especially to our members at BillWhittle.com who make the whole thing possible, make it possible for me to say what I want to say, and try to represent the values that we all share without having to worry about you know, whether or not it's going to cost me my rent check. So thank you. And we will see you next time. Okay, good night.